Listening, comprehension test. In this section of the test, you will have an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to understand conversations and talks in English. There are 3 parts in this section with special directions for each part. Answer all the questions on the basis of what is stated or implied by the speakers in the recording. There will be time for you to read the instructions and you will have a chance to check your work. The recording will be played once only. At the end of the test, you will be given 5 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to Part 1. Part 1. Direction. In this part, we'll hear 8 announcements or instructions. There is 1 question for each announcement or instruction. For each question, choose the right answer A, B, C or D. Then, on the answer sheet, find the number of question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer that you have chosen. Now, let's listen to an example. On the recording, you will hear,
"Hello, this is the travel agency returning your call. You left a message about the holiday you've booked, asking which meals are included in the cost during your stay at Sunny Hotel. Lunch and dinner are free, but if you wish to have breakfast in the hotel, you will need to pay an extra amount of money, depending on what you order. Let me know if I can help you with any other information. Goodbye."
On the test paper, you will read, which meal is not included in the price of the holiday? A. Breakfast. B. Lunch. C. Dinner. D. All. The correct answer is A. Breakfast. We are ready to start. First, you have time to look at question 1 to 8. Now, listen carefully and answer the questions 1 to 8. Question 1.
So, tomorrow and Friday, we can expect more of this lovely hot weather, with bright sunshine and temperatures up to 24 degrees, so don't forget to wear sun cream. Saturday and Sunday will be cooler and cloudier, but it will stay dry without any rain, so you won't need your umbrellas, and there might be a few sunny periods.
Question 2.
Well, the zoo was a bit disappointing. The children enjoyed feeding the horses and watching the monkeys and the birds, but they hoped to see lions and tigers, and there weren't any. Someone told us they don't have them there because the security isn't good enough, but I don't know if that's true.
Question 3.
So, how's it different to other winter sports?
Well, take downhill skiing, for instance. You have to book lessons, start on the nursery slopes and all that. But with snow kiting, you just need a wide snow-covered area like a frozen lake or field and you're off. Like with all winter sports, beginners should err on the side of caution. They need to be sure they can judge wind speed.
Question 4.
And welcome to our Tuesday evening programs. At 9:00 we'll have the first of our new programs on sport, and today you can see live the final of the International Tennis Cup. But before that we have singer, Jane Shelley in concert. She will perform songs from her new CD. This will be followed by today's news from around the world.
Question 5.
The train arriving at platform 6 is the 4.45 from London. The train due to arrive at platform 4 in approximately 5 minutes is the delayed 4.30 train to London. This train will now depart at 4.50 and travel non-stop. We apologize to passengers for the delay. Refreshments will not be available on this train.
Question 6.
Excuse me. I was sitting over the 10 minutes ago making a call on my mobile phone. I got a pen out of my bag to write something down and I think my purse fell out. I can't find it now. Has anyone handed it to you?
Question 7.
Hello, appointments.
Hello,
Question 7.
could I make an appointment to see Dr. Smith next Tuesday, please? Early evening, if possible. Anything after 6 o'clock.
Well, we open at 6:15 on Tuesday evenings, and there's an appointment at 6:35 or 6:50.
Thanks, I'll take the earlier one.
Question 8.
Good afternoon, passengers. This is the pre-boarding announcement for Flight 89B to Rome. We are now inviting those passengers with small children and any passengers requiring special assistance to begin boarding at this time. Please have your boarding pass and identification ready. Regular boarding will begin in approximately 10 minutes' time. Thank you.
It is the end of Part 1. Part 2. Direction. In this part, you will hear 3 conversations. The conversations will not be repeated. There are 4 questions for each conversation. For each question, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. Then on the answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Questions 9 to 12. Listen to the talk between father and son. First, you have time to look at questions 9 to 12. Now, listen carefully and answer the questions 9 to 12.
Hi, Peter. I wanted to ask you something. Do you know when your summer holidays start?
It's the middle of June, about the 13th, I think. Why?
Well, you know when Mum goes on her painting course in France, the week of the 16th? I've decided to go to Scotland.
Yeah?
A friend of mine called Jim has asked if I want to go with him and spend a week camping there. We'll do lots of hill walking and climbing.
Sounds great. Go for it, Dad. I suppose you want me to stay and look after the house, don't you?
Well, actually, I was wondering if you wanted to come with me. Jim has got a son your age, and he's coming too. I thought you might enjoy going off and doing a few things together. And it would be good to have a proper break before you start your summer job.
Oh, I see. That's a great idea, Dad. I'd love to come, but I really don't have the money for a holiday.
Oh, well, it won't cost much. I'll drive us up to Scotland. The campsite belongs to a friend of Jim, so that won't cost anything. And of course, Jim and I will pay for food and drink and things like that.
In that case, I'd love to come. Have you ever met Jim's son?
Oh, yes, several times, when he was a bit younger.
What's he like?
He's very similar to Jim. Easy to get on with, enjoys sport and good food. I'm sure you'll find plenty to talk about.
Perhaps we could all get together sometime soon, have a chat and plan a few things.
We could try, but it might be difficult. Jim's job takes him all over the world. But let's ask. Shall I phone him tonight?
Good idea. Catch you later, Dad.
OK, then.
Questions 13 to 16. Listen to an interview with a British who lives in Berlin. First, you have time to look at questions 13 to 16. Now, Listen carefully and answer the questions 13 to 16.
Britta, you're English, but you live in Berlin. Have you lived here for a long time?
Well, I was born in England, but I've lived in Germany for the past 20 years. I arrived in Berlin about 4 years ago. Before that, I lived in Bonn for 6 years. But I work as a journalist, and when the newspaper moved to Berlin, I moved with them.
Were you pleased to come to Berlin?
Yes, I was. I was looking forward to being in a big city like Berlin. Bonn was quite a lot smaller, so I love the busy atmosphere and all the cultural entertainments here, museums, theatres and so on. The only thing I don't like is the traffic. It's a bit noisy in the mornings. It wakes me up about 6:30, but most days I have to get up early anyway.
Where do you live in Berlin?
I have a flat in the old part of the city. It's right in the centre, and it's not too expensive. It costs me about £500 a month. My street is becoming very popular. There are lots of new art galleries and small cafes and friendly restaurants everywhere. Eating out in Berlin is fun and it's cheap, so it's something I do quite often.
How do you find transport in Berlin?
Well, the transport system here is very good. So I have a tram and bus ticket. But in fact, most of the time I cycle. Travel here is much cheaper than in other countries I know. Perhaps that's why people don't walk very much.
What do you like to do in Berlin at the weekends?
Well, I like art, so sometimes I go to one of the galleries. I have a nephew called Philippe. He's only 3, but he likes coming with me. He likes the cafe best, I think. And it's a change from going to the park. That's something he does very often. He usually comes out with me while his parents go shopping.
Do you miss your friends and family in England?
I don't really miss England. Most of my friends are here. I don't see much of my work colleagues socially, but I've got some very good friends who live in the same street as me. I enjoy meeting people, and I find Berlin is a very friendly city.
Thank you for talking to us, Britta.
Questions 17 to 20. Listen to the conversation between two friends. First, you have time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now, listen carefully and answer the questions 17 to 20.
Hi, Susanna. I'm just going to the practice for the school concert. Are you coming to play your violin in the school orchestra?
I'm afraid not, Carl. I'm not at all keen on playing in concerts.
You're not nervous about performing in front of an audience, are you?
It's not that, but there are lots of other things I'd rather be doing.
But I thought you liked music. You have violin lessons, don't you?
Yes, I do, but I don't enjoy them. The worst part is having to practice for half an hour every day. I never get any better, and it just seems a waste of time.
Oh, I enjoy practicing, because then I feel that I'm making progress. In fact, playing the piano is a way of escaping from the stress of my schoolwork.
I'd be happy if I could stop my violin lessons, but my parents won't let me. They say I'll regret it later, but I don't agree. It's not as if I'm going to make music my career like you are.
I'm not good enough to be a professional musician, I'm afraid. And it's much too uncertain. I'm hoping to be a chemist, like my father. That offers much more security.
I want a good career too, but I don't want to be a teacher like my parents. Perhaps when I've been to university, I'll have more idea of what I want to do. I'll probably get a job abroad, because I'd really love to travel and see the world.
Well, there's lots of time to decide. But what about this concert? They really need more violins in the orchestra. Won't you come and join in?
Sorry, you can't make me change my mind.
Well, That's a pity. I suppose you won't want a ticket to the concert either.
You're right, but I hope it goes well.
That is the end of part 2. Part 3 Direction. In this part, you will hear 3 talks or speech. The talks or speech will not be repeated. There are 5 questions for each talk or speech. For each question, choose the right answer A, B, C or D. Then on the answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer, UD chosen. Question 21 to 25. Listen to a talk about a tour. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Hi, my name's Rita Lewis, and I've come along today to tell you about my work. I'm a researcher on a television program, and I'm going to tell you about a typical working day in my job. Well, quite an exciting day, actually. But first of all, I should explain that I work on a wildlife program. I've always been interested in the sciences, and animals in particular, and I did my first degree in biology before going on to specialize in zoology in my second degree. My degree subjects are invaluable in my job, as they help me to plan things like deciding which animals to film, where to find them, and how to approach them. But I also did a postgraduate course in what's known as media studies that prepared me specifically for the television work, and it was the combination of the two things that really got me the job. The job has taken me to a variety of countries, including South Africa and Australia, but the day I'm going to tell you about was last winter, when I was in Costa Rica. I was in the jungle doing some filming for the program. I woke up at 5:30 in my room at the Corcovado National Park Research Center. Before setting off, we had to pack up our filming gear, which weighs 50 kilos, and head out to the first location. Fortunately, there are 12 of us in the team, including 3 cameramen and a local guide, so we could share the load between us. For this particular TV series, the presenter, who's called Jamie, had to complete a variety of difficult wildlife challenges. You know the sort of thing, communicating with wild monkeys, eating insects, etc. Anyway, that morning he had to photograph a poisonous type of frog, and that meant getting pretty close. The animals are not that hard to find, and fortunately our guide found one very quickly. I had to hold it very carefully, though, while Jamie got his camera ready. For me, this is the best part of the job, when I get to interact with the animals. Our first location was on top of a 30-meter-high waterfall. First of all, we wanted to film Jamie abseiling over the edge. Next, we needed to get a shot of the same action from below. We can't risk sending the camera down on ropes, so we have to walk for an hour-and-a-half hike through heavy jungle to the pools beneath. By the time we'd done that, it was lunchtime. Some of the crew tucked into chicken legs and cheese sandwiches, but I'd got tuna in mine, which was fine for me. I ate them on a completely empty, beautiful beach, and they tasted like the best sandwiches ever. After lunch, the team relaxed for the afternoon, before the evening's filming. Jamie's next challenge was to cross a river where crocodiles live. The river is near the sea, so we had to wait for the right tides. You need to use a torch to spot the crocodile's red eyes glowing in the dark and make sure they're not too close before you set out across the river. We found a safe place to film and set up our lights. We were using what we call a sun gun light, which is used to film in large areas at night. Jamie was just about to step into the water when the light went out. Fortunately, we had a smaller standby light, so we taped that onto the camera. We shone the new light over where Jamie was about to step. There, right in front of him, was a 3-meter-long crocodile. It must have come up from under the water while we were changing our equipment. Oh, that was close. We moved upstream where the water was lower. Jamie finally crossed, but when you see the program, you'll see he looks genuinely scared on screen, which is unusual for him as he's usually really calm and relaxed on camera, whatever he's doing. So, it was an exciting day. For me, getting out in the wild is the best part of the job.
Question 26 to 30. Listen to a lecture about a female poet. First, you have time to look at question 26 to 30. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 26 to 20.
Today we're going to look at the life and some of the works of one of America's finest modern female poets, Sylvia Plath. At the time of her death in 1963, Sylvia Plath was on the verge of the critical success and recognition that she had sought for most of her life. Her first novel, The Bell Jar, had just been published, and the publication of her collection of poems, Ariel, had just been agreed. These poems, which were mostly written during the last year of her life, chronicle the traumatic developments taking place in her personal life and were to make for her a reputation as a first-rate poet. But it wasn't until 1982, almost 20 years after her death, that her posthumously published collected poems won the Pulitzer Prize for Literature. Since this time, the fascination and intrigue with her work has continued to grow. Very few modern poets have captured the popular imagination as much as Plath, even to the extent that in 2003 a movie was made about her life and her intense relationship with husband and fellow poet Ed Hughes. To understand the continued growth in interest in her work, we have to look at the issues which her life and work address. As Susan Bassnett writes in her book on women writers, dying as she did in 1963, Sylvia Plath never knew that so soon afterwards the problems of what and how women write was to become such a crucial matter and was to be debated by so many other women. So, Sylvia Plath was a woman writing about women's issues before they were recognized as being of any importance. Sylvia Plath was born at Robinson Memorial Hospital in Boston on 27 October 1932. She was the firstborn child of Otto and Dorelia Plath, both highly educated academic people. Her father Otto was a professor of biology at Boston University, but her mother had been subjugated into a domestic role as housewife despite her level of education. Her father was not too pleased with the birth of his daughter and demanded that his wife have a son within the next 2 years. Amazingly enough, his wife obliged by giving birth to a son almost exactly 2 years later. This domineering father figure became a common theme that recurred throughout Plath's writing. With the birth of her brother, Sylvia had to work much harder to win her father's attention and approval. When in 1936 Plath's father became ill, access to him became even more restricted, and Plath's main means of getting attention from her father was by achieving academic success. This meant that from an early age she began to equate love with success. In 1940 Plath's father died, and this left the family in a very difficult financial situation. They were forced to move away from the seaside home that Plath had enjoyed so much and into a suburb of Boston, and her mother had to take a part-time job to support the family. In 1950, Plath graduated from Bradford High School and won a scholarship to Smith College. In the same year she published a short story entitled "And Summer Will Not Come Again" and a poem called "Bitter Strawberries." Plath's time at Smith was difficult as she had very high expectations of herself. She wanted to achieve immaculate grades, but she also wanted to be accepted by her peers, and an important part of being accepted was being popular and dating lots of boys. This was difficult because as a scholarship girl she had only a very small allowance to spend on clothes and going out, and each year's continued scholarship was dependent on the level of her grades. In 1953 Plath won a fiction contest sponsored by Mademoiselle magazine and was offered the opportunity to go to New York as a guest editor. She relished this opportunity to spend a month working in a professional publishing environment. But Plath returned from New York feeling exhausted, and after hearing news that her application to a creative writing course had been rejected, she fell into what was to become one of many depressions.
Question 31 to 35. Listen to a science lecture. First, you have time to look at question 31 to 35. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 35.
Many people, including scientists, are confused about the distinction between nuts and seeds. Some dictionaries say a nut is also a seed, others say a nut is a fruit, and still others say a nut can be both a fruit and a seed. How can an average person tell the difference? Well, in a nutshell, nuts are seeds, but seeds cannot be nuts. Clear as a bell, right? Part of the confusion stems from the fact that seeds and nuts are classified differently for botanical purposes and culinary ones. Botanists, that is, scientists who study plants, define a seed as part of a flowering plant or tree that will grow into a new plant or tree if it's buried in the ground and germinated. In this respect, it's similar to a human egg, which becomes an embryo when fertilized by sperm. Sometimes the plant embryo becomes enclosed in a covering, called an integument. The embryo plus its integument, therefore, constitute a seed. Sunflower seeds are good examples of this. You've got to crack open the black outer part, the integument, to eat the white embryo inside, right? That's why we call them sunflower seeds, and not sunflower nuts. However, it's possible for an embryo to have no type of integument at all. As these embryos grow, the tissue surrounding them develops into a fruit. We see this form in many berries, as well as tomatoes, and in peanuts and beans. So an embryo, or seed, doesn't need a covering to be called a fruit. Now, some plants produce a type of fruit called nuts. A nut is a plant fruit containing a single seed, with or without integument, that does not attach itself to the ovary, or inside wall of the nut. Nuts have a dry, tough outer shell that doesn't crack open when the seed becomes mature. Acorns, chestnuts, and walnuts are good examples of nuts. In the botanical sense, a nut is a seed because it is a compound ovary. It contains both the seed and the fruit of a plant. Usually, a plant's seed can be separated from its fruit, like when you poke seeds from a watermelon. But with nuts, the part inside the outer shell contains both the seed and the fruit, and these can't be pulled apart. This inside part of the nut, the part inside the outer shell, is called a kernel. The kernel is definitely not a nut. It's a fruit. People often eat the kernel, and when they do this, they say that they are eating a nut. For example, I'm eating a pecan, or I'm eating a chestnut. What they should be saying, technically, is I'm eating pecan meat, or I'm eating a chestnut kernel. In the same sense, a peanut typically refers to the entire package of seed/fruit encased in its outer shell, as well as to the edible inner seed/fruit. So, while a nut is botanically classified as a seed, it is primarily in this culinary sense that people confuse nuts and seeds. Because a nut in cuisine is more loosely defined than a nut in botany, the term nut gets slapped on many seeds that are not true nuts. Almonds, for example, are mistakenly called nuts, even though they are actually the edible seeds of plants called drupes, as are coconuts and pistachio nuts. Cashews are another example of nuts that are really seeds, along with Brazil nuts, which are seeds that come from capsules. In culinary language, any kernel used in cooking that is found within a shell may be labeled as a nut. One attribute nuts and seeds have in common is that both are highly nutritious. Nuts are a great source of energy because they have lots of oil, and are also an excellent source of protein, fiber, magnesium and zinc. Additionally, recent studies have also shown they are beneficial for the blood and heart. Many seeds are packed with vitamin E, which is touted for its anti-aging properties. Nuts and seeds are good not only for humans, but also for wildlife, a fact confirmed each fall when animals such as squirrels, chipmunks and jays can be seen busily storing nuts to avoid starvation in the coming winter cold.
This is the end of the listening paper. Now you have 5 minutes to transfer your answer to the answer sheet. It is the end of the listening test.